I am delighted to once again welcome Dr. Tammy Watchorn to the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast. She's also known as the Change Ninja. She's an educator, facilitator, coach, author, and keynote speaker, specializing in change management, neuroscience, and behaviours related to change. Her unique approach focuses on human element of change rather than rigid process, making her a standout voice in the field. Her methods are particularly appealing to those seeking organic and less disruptive ways to implement change in both personal and professional settings. She started a career in the public sector, particularly in healthcare, and has led some complex organisational change programs. And inspired by those, inspired by her experiences and teachings from Obeng, she transitioned into innovative ways of working. We've got her on today because she wrote the book, The Change Ninja, which is there for those who are watching just over my shoulder. And she's got another book coming out soon. So Tammy, welcome to the show again. Brilliant. So tell people a little bit about yourself. Give you a little bit of a taster there, but you've probably got a bit of a richer background than that.
Yes, I've worked in the health service for years trying to get change implemented. It's possibly one of the hardest places to get anything done and make anything, get people to do things differently. And it's probably the biggest place that needs that change being implemented. So as I got a new title as head of innovation, very grand title, no pay rise, just had to work harder. And nobody knew why we needed to innovate or what we needed to innovate. And just that was the task. So it was very broad. There was no specifics, but nobody agreed with anything I wanted to do. So I quickly realized that it wasn't actually about the innovation or the gadgets. It was about how to persuade people to work differently and change how they did things, because that's the biggest requirement, I think, in the health service. You can go out and buy the gadgets, but we need to do things differently. So I learnt a lot from failure. And I wrote about those stories in the first book, which is behind you, The Change Ninja Handbook, which is a gamified choose your own adventure book. So as the reader, you might die if you make the wrong choice. I died quite a lot when I was trying to make the changes happen. But it's the best way to learn. Get it wrong and you'll learn and you'll never repeat it again. So I really focused on people over process. Doesn't matter if you're doing agile or waterfall, whatever methodology you're using for project management and change, it's all about the people, because it's the people that will say no and get in your way. So learning how to approach them differently, work with them differently, persuade them that your change is a good change is what the Change Ninja is all about. No one will notice what you've done, so you kind of have to pat yourself on the back. Worst case, other people think it's their idea and they've done all the work. But you just have to, you know what you've done and you get the changes implemented. So the outcome is what you're after. So that was the first book. And then the second book, which is out in October, The Change Ninja Returns, and this time it's personal, came about from my own experiences of life change. Something happened. Doesn't really matter what happened, but essentially my life changed overnight and not in a good way. And I had to sort of start again. And it's like, what does a change ninja do? I could hide under the duvet and cry myself to sleep every night, wondering where it all went wrong. Or I could turn to my change ninja skills, because if this stuff works, I figured it would work. If it works in the workplace on other people and getting change delivered, it will work on yourself, because life changes are change projects as well. So I turned to all my tools and tested them out for real and became my own case study. And I don't want to give away any spoilers during this. I'm going to really try not to. It did work and it was a good ending. But I used the exact same tools. And I think the thoughts behind the book were, we have all of these skills and knowledge and resources that we use at work, and we sometimes don't use them at home, and vice versa. You can probably persuade your spouse to take the bins out and the kids to unload the dishwasher, but you can't persuade the governance manager at work to tick a box on a bit of paper so you can do it. So it's the same skill set, but we kind of leave them where we've learnt them, because we don't think we can cross them over a lot of the time. So that was where the idea for the second book came from.
Brilliant. It's interesting because I have my two daughters, and a while back I talked about the fact that we were looking at doing a load of work in the garden. And there was a lot to do, and I basically got these sticky notes. Surprisingly, I saw I've got
Do a Gantt
in
chart.
our kitchen. We've got well, not quite. We got a kitchen that's got 3 windows, and I just put all of the I had a to do, doing, done on each window, and I just started sticking these things on there. And the girls were helping me. They're a bit younger there then; they would have shook their head now, but even so, they appreciated the approach because they've done it themselves and used that
Yeah.
themselves in planning some of their revision and things. But it was just like I started doing that, and it was kind of like, yeah, there's a lot. And I've spoken to a few people about before now where I've always thought that the project management, so the tools and change management, for me is a life skill.
Yeah.
And it's some of the methods are taught, some of that organisation is taught as part of what you learn at primary school, part of what you learn as ready for exams or building study things. But actually, it's not brought out for me enough on actually, you're going to do a school project. Okay, how are you going to plan the project? And I think it's as adults, there's lots of people out there who kind of they're going to do something. How the hell do we do this thing? And it's kind of well, break it up, yeah,
Yep.
break it down. Just this, even that ability to set back and go, right, okay, let's break it down. Let's break it down. Oh, I don't know this, but all right, find out something, then break it down, and just those simple skills. And it's a bit like financial skills that don't get explicitly taught, and you kind of get them from your family members or your mates or Martin Lewis or whoever's the equivalent. If you're lucky, a Robert Kiyosaki book or something like that. But a lot of the time, we don't help people. Um, it's all about being more productive. It's about is this rather than how to manage change because it is. I've been through a few different things at different times of life where actually the world's turning upside down and dealing with that. And it's different to those project management skills and that turmoil that you get and being able to navigate that is really hard. And you can feel really overwhelmed and lost, can't you?
Absolutely. And when if it's a change at work, we're invested in it, we're involved in it. It could go badly for us, but we can separate it from the person we are. We can leave it at work, or we
Yeah.
try and leave it at work when we leave work. But when it's a change that's happening at home, if it goes wrong, it's going to really impact on you. So you're in much more, even if you
Yeah.
don't recognize that your brain's in emotional overdrive quite a lot of the time. And it's really hard to make decisions when you're like that. It's really hard to make changes because your brain is saying, just, calm down. It's fine as it is. We'll just sort it out because it recognizes the place you're in as a comfortable place, even if it's not a good place. So it's really, really hard to challenge your own brain and your own thinking when it's an emotion, when it's a big change that will affect your life and have an impact on you if you get it wrong. So it's much, much harder to do when it's personal. But we do have the skills because we know how to deal with that in the workplace a lot of the time, and we know how to deal with all the players, all the we call them stakeholders at work. It might be your family, it might be your friends when it's at home, but they are still the people that it's going to impact on or will impact on you.
I think it's something that I notice, and it's probably slightly different with the change side of it. But I notice that I am more prone to react at home
Mm-hmm.
than respond.
Yeah.
Because you're at a different emotional level, aren't you? Because at work you've got a little bit of a professional
Yeah.
behaviour barrier there, haven't you? Whereas with family, friends, or just not in that professional environment, as I say, it's that react rather than the driving down, screaming and flashing your lights at someone who's overtook you. You wouldn't
Yes.
do that to someone who'd done a similar sort of thing in the office, and it's quite extreme, the difference I found.
It is, and when you do that, you're reacting emotionally, so your kind of fight and flight thing is all kicked off as well, and you're triggering it in the other
Yeah,
person, and it never ends well, which is why you don't do it at
no,
work. Even if you want to, you
yeah,
find a way of managing it at work. So if you can use those skills at home and think, if this was my boss or if this was a senior colleague, how would I deal with this situation? It's quite hard to do. because you're allowed to be you at home, and you're never going to get it right all the time. And sometimes it's, it's just you feel good shouting and screaming, but it very rarely gets you the result you want. So if your focus is on how do we get the right results for everybody, and then you swapping those skills over that you have, because you will have really good negotiation skills at home that you forget about at work. You can bribe people to do stuff at work. You just need to find what the bribe is. It's not donuts.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Or
Yeah,
maybe
it's
it
interesting.
is.
I've got a 12-year-old who I'm trying to get to do. Well, she said she wanted to do parkrun, and we do parkrun. We've done it a few times, but then she loses her interest. And for her, she says she wants to get her next milestone T-shirt and stuff like that. And for those who don't know, there's parkrun is a free 5K run worldwide these days, but it's a fantastic thing. And when you get a certain number of runs at that particular the 5K through parkrun, you can get a T-shirt. She's really keen to get one. She's wanted one of these for 5 years. And I've kind of, come on, let's go. And getting her up on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock or whatever is a bit difficult. And I kind of threw in the thing, well, every time you get a PB, I'll give you some money as a bribe. And that worked as a first idea to get her there the second time, but didn't work for the third time. So bribes can work, but they have a limited, and I
Very
imagine
limited, yeah.
that they're limited at work as well, aren't they?
Yeah. So if it's a one-off, it might work, but if it's a continuous thing, you need to find
Yeah.
another way of. Because the thing you need to do to get someone to do something continuously is for them to want to do it for them. And they might want to do it for them because it makes them feel good doing it for you, but that's a harder sell. But if you can get somebody to think, this is really, if you can get your daughter to think, this is really good for me, and I'm going to set my own targets and challenges, then she'll want to do it for herself rather than thinking she should do it because she's, so it's shifting that mindset and motivation. It has to come from within, and it's to do with growth and fixed mindset. So sometimes we just want something without the effort, and sometimes we give up. But if we're breaking it down into chunks, and we keep going, and we've got that, I will get better. So if she can set her own PBs or targets, or I'm going to run the equivalent of the length of the UK this year in park runs, whatever it is, but she needs to find that thing that will motivate her to do it. So that's the real trick, and that's the harder bit, is getting somebody to see the value in this and setting their own little goals to achieve. And then you just encourage them along that path. But yeah, the bribery will only work for a short amount of time.
It's a Kickstarter, isn't it? In some ways, it can kickstart someone into something, and then that can kind of go there. And I think it's an interesting one there, where someone doing it for the sake of you. That's really quite from a professional point of view in work. If someone is doing it because they want to do it for you, well, that has a really fragile base, doesn't it? Because if they're just doing you that favour every month because they like you, well, yeah,
You're gonna have to
we all
pay it
try to be
back
likable, but
sometime.
sometimes people just go off you because you do something that is just stupid. I do anyway. It's quite easy to make a friend and an enemy at work without trying.
So it's all about shifting their mindset so that they come up with their own goals and motivation.
So
And if you're not
how do you
motivated,
go about doing it?
so I think fixed and growth mindset is really useful to know. Do you know? So fixed mindset is you've told yourself you can't do something because you're no good at it, you don't have the abilities, you're not smart enough, and the more you try, the more you get it wrong, the more it confirms your original thoughts that you're no good at this thing.
Yep.
So, my dad can't use his phone because he's told himself he's useless at technology. So if it doesn't work, the phone's broke. So he just gets a new phone. Quite an expensive hobby. Rather than learn, because he's just told himself he can't do it, so he refuses to learn. And when you've got a growth mindset, you know that you can always get better. You have a goal, but you break it down into chunks. So this week I'm going to do a park run. Next month I'm going to do 2 park runs. The month after that I'm going to do 4. Whatever it is, you need to set yourself manageable goals and celebrate. So your job here, if she can come up with that motivation and breakdown, is to celebrate with her. Because the more you celebrate, the more that tells your brain that's a good thing you've done, so it'll want to do it more. Like if you're learning to play the guitar, you'll keep practicing a chord until you get it right, and then you're all like really excited. Make everyone listen to your bad guitar playing.
Yeah, but then if it's me, I try and find an easier way to play that chord that's slightly similar. That's all right. What I have done is built a 3-string guitar, which makes the chords even easier. But there you go.
So you do that, and then you
Yeah,
move on
so
to the next one.
it's
So it's small, achievable
yeah,
goals that will motivate you, but you have to celebrate. There has to be, and that's the bribery bit. I think it's a way of
yeah.
celebrating it rather than bribing. So we'll go out and we'll
You
go
see,
out after and get pizza as a celebration if you do a park run every week for a month, something like that. So it's less bribery and more a motivation and goal that celebrates what you've done. It's hard to get other people to do it. Some simple things you can do is just ask questions like, how might we? That will never work. It didn't work last time. It's a waste of time. So how might we do it differently? How did you do it last time that will change it this time? What do you think we should do differently this time? So it's inviting people into an open conversation. If someone says that will never work, add the word yet. It won't work yet. So how might we make it work? And the really key one, it's really hard to do, is never use the word but. Because if someone said that will never work, and you go, but we're going to do it differently this time, you're basically, their brain's hearing that you've not heard them. So they shut down. So they've gone back into fixed mindset. It will never work. Whereas if you say, and we want to do it differently this time and learn from what we did last time. So how might we do it differently? You're opening people into a space where they're much more likely to have a growth mindset.
and it's interesting because I've been looking at see when you're planning sessions is a great one for this, where you have a situation where we've got a team, and I've been in that situation where it's kind of right. This is a tough goal to achieve this. How are we going to achieve it? And as you say, well, we can't do that. And it's kind of like, well, no, I know we've not done it before. We know it's hard. What if we were going to do it? How would we do it? And kind of it's breaking that asking people to look in a different way. I was talking to someone a while back. It was around risk management and around using risk management techniques on your plan in a different way. Instead of just looking for things what might happen, is kind of right. How can we stop this project? So as a team who are going to deliver this project, right, what things can we do to kill this project and make sure it never happens? And you list out all those, and then you go, right, okay, how do we solve that? How do we stop that happening? How do we stop that happening? How can we stop? And again, you're not saying how do we deliver it. What you're saying is what are the things that are going to stop us? And then each one of those, you're going, how do we avoid that? Well, we could bring in 10 more people. Or we could manage this stakeholder differently. We could bribe someone to do something. I mean, not in a legal way, but I mean, in that soft way of give and get negotiation kind of thing. And it makes it really it's that mind. It always is about mindset, about how we can do something, isn't it?
Yeah. That's a great one for risk management, because a lot of people start the project and then wait for things to sort of happen or make some stuff up.
Yeah.
And I remember a few years ago, well, it was quite a number of years ago now, there was a chap who jumped from space with a parachute. Do you remember that? And everyone's like, it's really risky, he could die. And it's like, he's pre-eliminated all of the risk. That's exactly what they did. They sat down and said, how might I die? And then they did the thing so that he wouldn't die, and he didn't. But it seemed to everyone else really risky. But they were, they were as confident as they could be that it was going to be successful, because they'd thought of all the things that could go wrong before they even did it. They didn't just say, we'll monitor that and we'll come back to it in a couple of years' time. That's what a lot of risks are on risk registers.
It's all right. We put it in the risk. We put it in the risk log. It's written down. If he dies, my arse is covered, so we're okay. That's not risk management, is it? It's about going right. Let's proactively solve that problem. And you look at those. It's that whole thing, isn't it, of the prioritizing those and looking at them and going right. What's the likelihood? But in that case, the likelihood on some of those items might have been quite small, but the impact was very, well, literally very big for him if it did come to fruition,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's where you kind of got to. Sometimes I know there's a balance of money, and in projects it's different, isn't it? Right. Okay. So if it does go wrong, what's the worst that's going to happen? Do we want to spend £20 million avoiding that risk that is only going to cost us 50 quid if it goes wrong? Well, no, we don't. And you've got to balance those things. But again, I don't know if you. I'm guessing you would have done. There'll be situations where you will have stakeholders that are in your change programs, and they will be so risk averse that, or so concerned about the impact on their business processes or their team's utilization or whatever, that they will just go, no, it's too much of a risk for me. Solve this problem for me, solve everything for me. You've got to pay for it. And your project. How do you deal with someone in those scenarios? What is your methods for those?
I think again it's the prelimination bit. So don't wait until you're into it and they're in the meat of it. Have that and have that pre-conversation around what's the worst thing that could happen with this project for you and your team, and how would we avoid that happening? Or if it did happen, what would we do differently? Because you're getting lots and lots of data before you start, and you'll get loads of creative thoughts as well. The other thing I do with risk management is, so we talk about risks as aliens. So that's a really good way to engage, because nobody likes risk management. Like, as soon as you mention it, everyone falls asleep. It's really dull. So we use a story
Boring, isn't
around
it?
aliens. Risks are aliens. They've landed on your spaceship. They're going to kill you, have babies. How are you going to kill them and make sure that they don't take over the spaceship? But once we've got the risk, the alien, and worked out how to kill it, then look at it from the alien's perspective. Because the alien might only want to eat you because it's hungry. So you could just feed the alien rather than panicking about trying to capture it and kill it. You could it might be quite useful to know. So just, as E.T. and what was it, Elliot did with the M&Ms, just give the alien some food. It might actually be quite friendly. So looking at the risk from different people's perspectives will also give you much more data. And quite often in that, you'll just find the answer, and it'll be quite a simple thing. Or we could, it's a huge risk to my team, but you've identified it from someone else's aspect. You might be able to come in, all we need to do is that, and it will stop that risk happening. So the downside of doing this is you eliminate all of the risks, or a lot of the risks, before you start, and then you get your arse kicked for not having a big risk register in the system because you've got rid of them all.
You've got such a big project. Why are you coming to the
Where's all
risk
your
review board
risk?
every week
We've got
with
rid of
nothing
them.
to? Yeah,
Yeah.
there's got to be risks, and then you make some up,
And then you make them up.
and then
It's
you've got to
okay to
update it, and
make
you get
things
told
up.
off because you forget to update it.
Yeah. I think it's, if the system isn't working for you and you can get away with making stuff up just to tick the box and keep everyone happy, just make it up. It's not doing it for the sake of not doing it, because there is governance and you're doing it. But if you're being asked really ridiculous things, make it up. No one will ever check. Is that libelous?
That's
I
a,
get into
that's
trouble for that. Don't sue me.
probably.
My insurance
No,
has
it'd
run
be
out.
fine. But it's a really good point though. That is that, and it goes to the ninja mindset book, the pirate mindset, and all that sort of stuff that kind of all sits around this that you talk about around the mindset of, well, if it's not delivering for the organisation, why are we doing it? And I'm a pain in the arse on stuff like this with people on kind of, why are we doing that? Why am I doing that? If I have to do something twice, or if I have to put the same update into somewhere 3 times, Nigel's inner chimp gets very angry and starts throwing stuff around because it's just like, why?
It's just,
Just
there's no
boils.
value in it.
Yeah.
The good,
No,
I
but
don't
then
think.
sometimes.
Sorry, go on.
No, you go on, you go on.
I was just saying this. I don't think it's in the book, but a really good one was when I was at my innovation role. My boss said we need a KPI for ideas. What do you think? And I'm like, it's not a KPI. But she insisted on having a KPI for the number of ideas the organisation had every month, and she insisted on all of her KPIs being green. She didn't want any ambers or reds on the rag status. So I said, fine, we'll have 20 ideas a month as a target. Does that sound okay? And she says, yeah, that's fine. So it's always green because I have at least 5 ideas a day in the shower. She didn't ask, she didn't want to know what the ideas were and whether they were any good or who had come up with the ideas. She just wanted at least 20 ideas every month. So, make it up because it's nonsense. It keeps everyone happy. There's no point arguing that because you'll just waste time and everyone will be upset. So it's nonsense. Fill it in. No one's going to check it and no one can hold you to account for it because it's nonsense to start with. So, don't do it just to be a rebel, but just think, what is the value of this? And if there's no value, do the bare minimum. Again, don't sue me.
And I think no, but I think you're right. I think there's a balance in it, and as a professional, but as a professional, you're employed by an organisation to do a job, and there is corporate stuff around it where you need to adhere to some of the corporate shenanigans. There are situations where that's put in place for no good reason. Your innovation thing there, you're saying it's in there because someone wants something, someone wants green. Great. Let's give a free beach ball to everyone every day. That's one innovation. It's a stupid innovation, but you're still getting ideas. And that's what you did, really, wasn't it? Is that whole thing of going, it's meeting it, it's nonsensical. Okay, fine, tick. When you get something that is materially impacting you, your team, other people, then it's a case of, right, for me, I'll stick my heels in a little bit, make a bit of noise. And if I get told to go jog on and just suck it up, I'll basically say, so what you're telling me is you're not going to do anything. You're just telling me to suck it up. That's the official line. And I've said those words before now, and people have kind of looked at me and gone, well, no, kind of. And do you know what I mean? They wouldn't say it in those terms, but they're basically saying, just get on with it. We can't do it because bigger corporate can't. They have no influence. And if we want to do something that impacts, and you're kind of okay with that, and then you kind of just got to work around those things, trying to chuck some efficiency in around it. But I think it's incumbent on us as managers and professionals to sit there and challenge strongly the bullshit. Because if you don't, it just layers on, doesn't it? And it's the analogy's getting there.
Yeah. I think for me the key is what is the challenge and how to challenge, because the head-on stuff doesn't work. It very rarely works. So there's two things. I'll come back to the environment thing in a minute. But the first thing, I was working with a client recently, and they were being asked a ridiculous ask by their stakeholder to come up with a detailed plan that they couldn't come up with because, one of those things. And they were like, and it was just backwards and forwards. They needed to do this. We can't do this. They don't understand. So I asked them who was asking that person to get them to do it. And the penny clicked that that person was actually in the middle and was being asked by their bosses in a different organisation for this stuff. So they were really so they just wanted it to keep their life easy. And they didn't care that it was impossible. They just wanted. So I said, well, why don't the two of you get together and work out what you can do between you that will appease their bosses, but allow you to not do what's being asked just now. So what's the bare minimum if you get together and understand that actually it's a ridiculous ask from over here? What would make them happy to pass on, knowing that it wasn't the full thing that you could work together on? And then you're in cahoots. So it's tackling that. So think about who's asking that person. So they can't do it because of the seniors up. So how can you approach them and say that how do we meet this need that's clearly ridiculous, that we can't really influence, in a way that's reducing the pain for both of us? So it's thinking about who else is involved in that broader circle, because mostly someone else is just they're doing the job they've been asked to do and they just want the easiest job. They don't want the grief, so they're passing it on, and it goes down the chain. And there's this assumption that nobody can influence it when you can all influence it. But you need to be in agreement with people at that level above and the level above. It's a chain reaction up the way as well as down the way. So think about if somebody's insisting and they're sort of agreeing it's not worth doing, but we have to do it because, and we don't have that ability to change it is go, right, how can we trick the system? How can we do the bare minimum so that everyone's happy, but we're not spending our time doing a load of nonsense?
Yeah, it's that a little bit like you said, the aliens, the putting yourself in someone else's shoes. I remember there was a scenario with quite a while ago where just a very senior member of a customer organisation had been shown something, and they'd said, "Oh, what about can it do this? Oh, it'd be good if it could do this." And that came eventually down to us as a delivery organisation, 4 or 5 layers down into the as a supplier, saying this has got to be done. It's got to be done by now, straight away. And it had changed on the way down from being, and it got done, and we did it really quickly, and it was really good. And the senior member went, "Oh, that's good." That was it. That's good. Oh, that's good. That it wasn't. This must be done now. It was a very, oh, wow, yeah, cool. I didn't realise I didn't expect that. It was like one of those things where someone had taken it as a thou shalt.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I remember when I first started working in IT in data warehousing and that sort of area and the BI reporting, it was the thing that always kind of drives me is people go, I want this report. I want it to tell me this, or I want this data so that we can do reports on it. And I've always gone, so hang on, what's the question you're asking? What decision are you making from this data? First, tell me the decision, not the data you need, because you may not be asking for the right data.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes to that point you're saying there is where you're talking to someone and saying, I want a project plan. Okay, why do you want a project plan? What's the question you're trying to answer? What's the decision? Because at the end of the day, this communication, it's about a decision somewhere. Someone needs to make a decision, deploy resources there, not deploy resources there. Do that. If there's no decision being made, why is it being created anyway? But if there is a decision being made, what is the decision so you can make sure the right vehicle is used to communicate the information in order to base that decision on? And a Gantt chart with 5,000 lines isn't always the answer. Sometimes it is, but it isn't always the answer, is it?
Yeah, no, and it's the comfort thing, isn't it? And people want to get rid of stuff off their desk, so a bit of it's Chinese whispers, a bit of it is this is how we do things, and it was Bill in 1962 that came up with the process, and nobody's ever questioned it. But don't try and if you try and question the system, you're gonna bang your head against the wall because people hide behind the system. But if you think, okay, why does this person, as you said, why does this person want this? Who's asking them for it? What is the real question? And make friends with them to say, how can I make you look good to the person who's asking you for this in a way that's providing value and not just wasting everyone's time? So it's getting into those conversations. A lot of it is spending time with people and understanding what's going on. And I think we're all so busy, we all feel like we need to deliver, that we forget that people that we work with are humans, and there's all sorts going on that we're completely unaware of. So it's getting into that. I said I would talk about environment. So I do talk about this quite a lot in the second book, is when things aren't going well, you'll be triggered in some way. Even, if your boss tells you off in front of everyone or criticizes your work, you're going to get triggered by something. And we all have different triggers. And that's kind of social pain triggers our brain like physical pain, and then we respond and we react and we feel rubbish and all of that. And so noticing that, and then changing your environment that you're in, so changing your response, because when stuff's coming at you that's making you feel less than good, whether it's work or at home, you'll be triggered by a certain domain in your brain. Talk about the scarf domain. I'm not going to go into it just now, but there's certain things that are triggered, and you'll respond to that, and it will always be the same things that are triggered in those situations, and your response will always be the same. So you need to work out what's being triggered and then what's not being triggered. There's a list of these domains, and if you focus on the thing that's not triggered, you'll actually shift the environment, because you can't change the stressor that's coming at you. You have no influence over it. whether it's, again, work or home, your boss criticizing it, you can't change that scenario, but you can change how you respond to it. And if you know how you're going to respond based on the triggers, and if you know what's not really bothering you, and you can respond in that way, then it will reduce the pain. So it makes the thing seem much, much less scary and much less impactful, and whatever trigger it is for you. So I call it changing the environment around you. So using what you have to shift how you feel and how you respond to something will reduce the pain of the thing that's hitting you over the head. Does that make sense? So,
Yeah,
there's
because it is.
job cuts have been announced, or mergers. You'll feel triggered by that. Am I going to lose my job? And blah, 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 blah. So if you try and focus on a different area, and even it's hard to do it, but there's tools in the book that help you pick out, okay, I'm not bothered by this just now, so I'm going to do something in relation to this. It will shift your brain's focus. It's like if you've got a sore tooth and you're waiting for the dentist, you don't sit there going, oh, my tooth's really sore. You'll put the TV on, or you'll go on Twitter, whatever it is that you can distract yourself with, play computer games, to take your mind off what's happening. It's exactly the same for stresses in life. You need to take your mind off the thing that's happening, that's triggering you, because you'll just respond the way you always do, and you'll feel bad.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that first part of that interview with Tammy Watchorn. Come back next week, find out how to respond and react and all different things. In the meantime, you could get her old book, Change Ninja, or get ready to buy her new book. It comes out, I think it's the 3rd, end of October, anyway. Jump on her website and you'll find out details. Follow links in the, I don't know why I pointed down, I assume on something, it'll be below anyway, the show notes, and you'll be able to get a copy of her new book or an old book there. In the meantime, also, I mentioned it last week, if you are in the UK or want to come to the UK and want to pop along to Welwyn Garden City around 7th of November, PMI UK chapter is running a Synergy event again, where people matter most, which is the topic which, as you've heard me say, project management is all about people, communication, blah, blah, blah. So people matter most. You've got a discount code. It is Sunday Lunch PM 24, and you will get 25% discount off that, which is worth it. I can't remember how much it works out, but it's a big chunk. Link in the show notes, or just Google PMI UK org, and there's a Synergy button on there. So jump along there. Otherwise, I will catch up with you next week. Have a great day with whatever you're doing. Look after yourself, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye. So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links in the way that it's set up, that have kindly allowed me to share their services, really. The first one is Mike Clayton, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's very different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well, if you like. And I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me that. So if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well. So there's very limited risk on that. So jump on that, and that again, it's nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, and enjoy. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.